I'm Emma, 29 years old. The day I walked into my husband's office with a cake to celebrate his promotion, I thought I was surprising the man I'd built my life with. But it turned out I was the one in for a surprise. He was kissing his boss's daughter, just minutes before he shoved me into a wall and punched me in the face to protect her. That moment shattered everything I knew about love, trust, and safety. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. And truly, thank you for being here. It was a Thursday morning in Austin, Texas, October 15th. I remember the date because it's burned into my memory as the last day I was truly naive. I woke up to the smell of coffee drifting from our little kitchen. David was already up, standing by the window in his crisp white shirt, looking like the successful software engineer he was about to become. "Morning, beautiful," he said, handing me my coffee exactly how I liked it. 2 sugars, oat milk, in the ceramic mug with little cacti on it that I'd bought at a local market. These tiny rituals had anchored our 3-year marriage. David knew I was particular about my coffee, just like I knew he needed exactly 8 minutes to eat his breakfast or he'd be anxious all day. I was curled up on our couch with my laptop, putting finishing touches on a logo design for this cute startup that made eco-friendly dog toys. Being a freelance graphic designer meant I could work from our apartment, which honestly was perfect because we couldn't afford much else. Student loans, you know. Plus the rent on our 2-bedroom place in South Austin was already stretching our budget. "Big day today," David said, adjusting his tie. The navy one I'd bought him for his birthday. The meeting with Richard Blackstone himself. Richard Blackstone was the CEO of Blackstone Technologies, this major tech company where David worked as a software engineer. David had been gunning for the senior engineer position for months, staying late, working weekends, doing everything to prove himself worthy of that promotion and the 25% salary bump that came with it. "You're going to kill it," I told him, reaching up to straighten his collar. "They'd be crazy not to promote you. You've been carrying half that department anyway." David smiled, but there was something in his eyes I couldn't quite read. Looking back now, I realize it was guilt. But at the time, I just thought it was nerves. "What if we actually got that house we looked at in Cedar Park?" I said, pulling up the real estate listing on my phone. "The one with the big windows for my studio?" "Let's see what happens today first," David said, kissing the top of my head. "But yeah, maybe. Maybe everything's about to change." He had no idea how right he was. David left for work around 8:30, and I settled into my design flow. I was working on this website for a local yoga instructor when my design just clicked, you know? One of those moments when everything comes together perfectly. I was feeling so productive, so optimistic about our future. We'd met 4 years ago at a coffee shop downtown. Such a cliché, right? I was working on my laptop, and he spilled his latte on my sketches. Instead of being annoyed, I laughed. And he spent 20 minutes helping me recreate the ruined designs. 6 months later, he proposed during a weekend trip to San Antonio, right by the Riverwalk. Our wedding was small, just family and close friends at a little venue outside the city, nothing fancy. But it was ours. David's parents flew in from Dallas. My mom came from Houston, and my best friend Sarah was my maid of honor. We honeymooned in New Mexico because that's what we could afford, but we didn't care. We were building something together, or at least, I thought we were. At 2:30 p.m., I was deep into designing this brochure for a local pet grooming business when my phone buzzed. David's name flashed on the screen with a text that made me literally scream with joy. "Got the promotion. Senior engineer plus 25% salary increase. CEO wants to celebrate tonight. Love you." I actually jumped up from my desk chair and did this embarrassing little victory dance around our living room. Our neighbor probably thought I'd lost my mind. I immediately called Sarah. "Sarah, David got it, the promotion." "Oh my God, Emma, that's amazing. You guys totally deserve this." I was bouncing on my toes, pacing around our apartment, already calculating what this meant. The salary increase would finally let us start saving for a house down payment. Maybe we could even take a real vacation, somewhere with a beach and those drinks with little umbrellas. "I have to do something special," I told Sarah. "I need to surprise him at work." "What are you thinking? Remember that chocolate cake from Sweet Dreams that he always orders for my birthday? I'm going to get one made and surprise him at his office." After we hung up, I practically ran to my closet. I picked out the red dress David always said looked amazing on me, the one I'd worn on our last anniversary. I did my makeup, adding just a touch of red lipstick to match the dress. I wanted to look perfect for his big moment. Sweet Dreams Bakery was this little family-owned place about 10 minutes from our apartment. Maria, the owner, knew us because we came in every few weeks for their incredible chocolate croissants. Special occasion, she asked, as I ordered a small chocolate cake with "Congratulations, Senior Engineer David," written in blue frosting. "My husband just got promoted," I said, probably grinning like an idiot. "I want to surprise him at work." "That's so sweet," Maria said, carefully boxing up the cake. "He's lucky to have someone who celebrates his wins like this." Lucky? Yeah, that's what I thought too. The drive to Blackstone Technologies always intimidated me a little. Their building was this sleek 15-story glass tower in downtown Austin that screamed success and money. I'd only been there twice before, once for their Christmas party, and once when David forgot his laptop and needed me to drop it off. As I parked and walked toward the entrance, balancing the cake box carefully, I felt this surge of pride. My husband worked here. My husband just got promoted here. We were finally making it. The lobby was all marble and modern art, with this huge abstract sculpture in the center that probably cost more than our annual rent. I approached the reception desk where a young blonde woman I'd never seen before was typing at her computer. "Hi, I'm here to see David Richardson," I said, setting the cake box down carefully. "I'm his wife, Emma." The receptionist, her name tag said Jennifer, looked up with what I can only describe as a weird expression, like recognition mixed with discomfort. "Oh," she said, her smile seeming forced. "David Richardson, he's in a meeting right now." "That's okay. I don't mind waiting. It's actually a surprise." Jennifer glanced toward the elevators, then back at me. "He's in the executive conference room on the 12th floor, with Mr. Blackstone." "Perfect. Can I go up?" Maybe I should call first." "No, please don't," I said quickly. "It's a surprise for his promotion. I promise I won't interrupt anything important." Jennifer hesitated, then handed me a visitor's badge. "Elevator Bank B, 12th floor. The conference room is at the end of the hall." I thanked her and headed to the elevators, practically vibrating with excitement. In the elevator, I checked my reflection in the polished steel doors, making sure I looked perfect for David's big moment. The 12th floor was quiet, with that expensive carpet that absorbed sound and those floor-to-ceiling windows that offered an incredible view of Austin's skyline. I could hear voices coming from the end of the hall, David's familiar laugh mixed with what sounded like a woman's voice. As I got closer, I could make out words. David was saying something about exceeded expectations on the Morrison project. And then this woman's voice, light and bubbly, said, "You're exactly what this company needs." I was about 5 feet from the conference room door when I heard David say, "This celebration tonight, just the two of us." And the woman responded, "My dad's out of town anyway. We'll have complete privacy." Something cold settled in my stomach, but I pushed it away. It was probably just professional talk. Maybe she was talking about celebrating with the whole team later. I reached the conference room door, which was slightly ajar, and raised my hand to knock. That's when I saw them. Through the gap in the door, I could see David pressed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, his arms wrapped around a stunning blonde woman in an expensive navy suit. They were kissing with the kind of desperation that spoke of familiarity, of this not being the first time. The cake box slipped from my hands and hit the marble floor with a sound that seemed to echo through the entire building. The chocolate cake I'd carefully chosen, with its congratulatory message in blue frosting, splattered across the white marble like some kind of twisted metaphor for our marriage. David and the woman sprang apart, both turning toward the door with identical expressions of shock. But here's what got me: David's expression wasn't guilt. It was annoyance, like I was interrupting something important. The woman was gorgeous in that put-together way that screamed money and privilege. Perfect blonde hair, manicured nails, a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. She looked at me with this expression of cool assessment, like she was sizing up the competition and finding me lacking. "Emma," David said, his voice completely flat. Not honey or babe like he usually called me, just Emma, like I was an acquaintance he'd run into at the grocery store. "What?" I started, but my voice cracked. I cleared my throat and tried again. "What is this?" The blonde woman stepped forward, and I noticed she was wearing red lipstick that was now smeared across David's mouth. "You must be the wife," she said, and her tone was almost amused. "I'm Madison Blackstone." Blackstone, as in Richard Blackstone, as in the CEO's daughter. "David," I said, my voice stronger now, "what the hell is going on?" David ran his hand through his hair, the same gesture he made when he was stressed about work deadlines or when we were arguing about money. "Emma, this isn't... You shouldn't be here." "I shouldn't be here?" I stepped fully into the conference room, my heels crunching on pieces of the broken cake box. "I came to surprise my husband with a cake to celebrate his promotion, and I find him kissing his boss's daughter. So yeah, maybe I shouldn't be here. Maybe I should be somewhere planning my divorce." Madison laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, this is precious. David, you didn't tell me she was this dramatic." "You've talked about me." I looked between them, the full scope of this betrayal starting to hit me. "How long has this been going on?" "Emma, please," David said, stepping toward me. "Let me explain." "How long, David?" Madison answered instead. "About 2 months, since the company retreat in San Antonio." 2 months. I thought about all the late nights David had been working, all the client dinners and team meetings that kept him at the office until 9 or 10 p.m. I thought about the new cologne I'd noticed last month, the way he'd started going to the gym more often, how he'd seemed distracted during our conversations. 2 months, I repeated. "So every time you told me you were working late?" "It started as work," David said defensively. "Madison and I were collaborating on the client presentation, and things just developed." Developed. I looked at Madison, who was watching this whole scene with the detached interest of someone watching a soap opera. "And you're what, the marketing director? Using your daddy's company to play with married men?" Madison's smile turned sharp. "I'm the marketing director because I'm qualified, not because of my father." And David came to me. He said his marriage was stale, that you two had grown apart. The words hit like physical blows. "Stale?" David's face flushed. "Emma, you don't understand the pressure I've been under. So you decided to cheat with your boss's daughter? That was your solution to pressure?" "It's not cheating if the marriage is already over," Madison said casually. "David was going to ask you for a divorce anyway. I just helped him realize what he really wanted." I stared at my husband, this man I'd shared a bed with for 3 years, who knew I hated the sound of people chewing ice and that I always cried at dog food commercials. This man who'd held me when my grandmother died, and who'd spent our first Christmas married trying to assemble a bookshelf for 6 hours because he wanted our apartment to feel like home. "David," I said quietly, "is that true? Were you planning to divorce me?" David looked at Madison, then back at me. In that glance, I saw everything I needed to know. He wasn't torn between us. He'd already made his choice. "Emma, I think we both know we haven't been happy." "We haven't been happy, David. Yesterday morning you told me you love me. Yesterday you were talking about buying a house together." "People say things," Madison interjected. "It doesn't mean they mean them." That's when something inside me snapped. "Excuse me?" I turned to face Madison fully. "People say things. Are you talking about my marriage like it's some casual hookup?" "I'm talking about reality," Madison said, crossing her arms. "David's been miserable with you for months. He told me you're clingy, that you don't understand his ambitions, that you're holding him back with your little art projects." Little art projects. The graphic design work that paid for half our rent, that I'd built from nothing into a steady income stream that allowed David to take career risks, because he knew I could cover our expenses if needed. "My little art projects." I stepped closer to Madison. "You mean the work that's been supporting us while David climbed the corporate ladder?" "Emma, please," David started. "No," I cut him off, my voice getting louder. "I want to hear this. Madison, tell me more about what my husband said about our marriage." Madison smiled like she was enjoying this. "He said you're boring, that you never want to go out, that you're content with your small-town dreams while he has bigger plans. He said you're like a weight dragging him down." Each word was a knife twist. I thought about all the times I'd encouraged David to take work trips, to network, to pursue opportunities even when it meant less time together. I thought about how I'd supported his late nights and weekend work sessions, how I'd cheerfully eaten dinner alone so many times I'd lost count. "A weight?" I repeated. "David, is that really what you think of me?" David looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Emma, you're taking this out of context." What context makes calling your wife a wait okay? Madison stepped between us. Look, this is awkward for everyone. David's moving on, you should too. He's got real opportunities now, and he needs someone who can match his level of success. Someone like you, I suppose. Someone like me, Madison confirmed. Someone who understands what it takes to succeed in the corporate world. I looked at this woman, this privileged princess who'd gotten her job because of her last name, who was talking about success while she was sleeping with married employees. And I felt something I'd never felt before. Pure, burning rage. You understand success, I said. You're sleeping with married men in your father's company. That's your definition of success? Madison's face flushed. How dare you? How dare I? How dare you? You're destroying marriages for fun. I'm not destroying anything, Madison shot back. David was already done with you. I just gave him the courage to admit it. Before I could think about what I was doing, my hand connected with Madison's cheek in a slap that echoed through the conference room. Madison stumbled backward, her hand flying to her face, her eyes wide with shock. You psycho, Madison screamed. You hit me. That's when David exploded. What the hell is wrong with you? David grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin hard enough to bruise. Don't you dare touch her. David, you're hurting me. You just assaulted Madison. Are you insane? I'd never seen David like this. In 3 years of marriage, we'd had arguments, sure, but he'd never grabbed me, never looked at me with this kind of fury. It was like looking at a stranger wearing my husband's face. Let go of me, I said, trying to pull away. Instead, David shoved me, hard. I stumbled backward, my heel catching on a piece of the broken cake box, and slammed into the wall behind me. Pain shot through my back and shoulder, and I felt something warm on my lip. David, I gasped, touching my mouth and seeing blood on my fingers. But David wasn't looking at me. He was focused entirely on Madison, who was still holding her cheek, tears streaming down her face. Are you okay, baby? David asked, reaching for Madison. Did she hurt you? Baby, he called her baby. David, I said again, but he ignored me. That's when he hit me. It wasn't a slap like I'd given Madison. It was a closed fist punch to my left cheek that sent me sprawling to the floor, my head ringing, stars exploding behind my eyes. I landed hard on my hands and knees, the broken cake grinding into my palms. Don't you ever touch her again, David said, his voice cold and threatening. Do you understand me? I sat on the floor of that conference room, blood dripping from my split lip onto my red dress, staring up at the man I'd married. The man who'd promised to love and protect me. The man who'd just hit me to defend his mistress. David, I whispered, you hit me. For a moment, David's expression flickered, like he was suddenly realizing what he'd done. But then Madison spoke. She attacked me first, Madison said, her voice shaky but determined. She's clearly unstable. David, you should call security. David looked between us, and I saw the moment he made his choice. Again. Jennifer, David called toward the open door. The receptionist appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide as she took in the scene, me on the floor with blood on my face. David standing over me, Madison crying and holding her cheek. Call security, David told Jennifer. My wife attacked Madison, and she's being violent. Jennifer's eyes met mine, and I saw something there. Recognition, sympathy, and something else. Like she'd seen this before. Mr. Richardson, Jennifer said carefully. Maybe we should call the police instead. No, David said quickly. Just security. We can handle this internally. But I was already pulling out my phone. Actually, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the blood in my mouth. I think calling the police is a great idea. I stood up slowly, my back aching from where I'd hit the wall, my cheek throbbing where David had punched me. Jennifer, right? I said to the receptionist. You saw what happened here? Jennifer nodded, glancing nervously between David and Madison. I saw Mr. Richardson hit you, ma'am. Jennifer, that's not, David started. I saw it, Jennifer said firmly. She was on the ground and you hit her. David's face went pale. Madison grabbed his arm. David, we need to control this situation. Control, I laughed. And it came out shaky and bitter. You want to control this? Too late for that. I was already dialing 911, my hands surprisingly steady. David lunged toward me, trying to grab my phone, but Jennifer stepped between us. Sir, please don't, Jennifer said. Security is already on the way up. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice was calm and professional. "I need to report a domestic assault," I said clearly. "My husband just hit me in front of witnesses at Blackstone Technologies downtown." I could hear David and Madison whispering frantically behind me. But I focused on giving the operator the details. The address, the floor, my name. David's name. When I hung up, I looked at David and Madison, who were both staring at me like I'd just set off a bomb. "Emma, please," David said, his voice suddenly desperate. "Let's talk about this privately. We can work this out." "Work it out?" I touched my split lip gingerly. "David, you just punched me in the face, in front of your mistress, at your workplace. What exactly do you think we're going to work out?" Security arrived first, 2 guards who took one look at my bloodied face and immediately separated David from me. Then the police. Then the paramedics, who insisted on checking my injuries despite my protests that I was fine. As the paramedic cleaned the blood from my lip and checked my back where I'd hit the wall, I heard one of the police officers questioning Jennifer. She was telling them exactly what she'd seen. David grabbing me, pushing me, hitting me while I was on the ground. Madison was crying and claiming I'd attacked her first, that she was the victim here. But when the officers asked to see her injuries, the red mark on her cheek was barely visible, while my face was already swelling and bruising. "Ma'am," Officer Rodriguez said to me, "do you want to press charges?" I looked at David, who was watching me with this expression of panic and disbelief, like he couldn't believe his perfect plan was falling apart. "Yes," I said, "I want to press charges." The drive home was a blur. My car felt foreign, like I was piloting some machine I'd never seen before. Everything looked the same: the familiar streets of Austin, the coffee shop where David and I had met, the grocery store where we did our weekly shopping, but nothing felt real. I called Sarah from my car, sitting in our apartment complex parking lot, because I couldn't make myself go inside yet. "Emma, how did the surprise go?" I started crying then, really crying for the first time since it happened. Between sobs, I told her everything: the kiss, Madison's cruelty, David's violence, the police. "I'm coming over," Sarah said immediately. "Don't go anywhere, don't do anything, just wait for me." Sarah arrived 20 minutes later with a bag of ice, a bottle of wine, and the kind of fierce expression that meant someone was about to pay for hurting her friend. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug that made me start crying all over again. "That son of a bitch," she muttered, guiding me to the couch. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I can't believe he did this to you." Sarah helped me clean up properly, icing my cheek and lip while I told her every detail I could remember. She took pictures of my injuries with her phone, which felt surreal but necessary. "We need to document everything," Sarah said. "This isn't just cheating, Emma. This is assault. This is serious." As we sat on my couch, the couch David and I had picked out together at a thrift store, where we'd spent countless evenings watching movies and planning our future, I started to see the past few months differently: the late nights at work, the new clothes I hadn't seen him wear, the way he'd started criticizing little things about me, my cooking, my work schedule, my friends, the expensive dinners on our credit card that he'd explained as client meetings. "I need to see something," I told Sarah, grabbing my laptop. I logged into our joint bank account, something David had never bothered to check because I handled all our finances. What I found made my stomach drop. Over the past 2 months, David had spent almost $3,000 on things I'd never seen. Dinners at expensive restaurants, charges from jewelry stores, a $400 charge from Victoria's Secret that definitely hadn't been for me. "Sarah, look at this." Sarah peered over my shoulder as I scrolled through the transactions. "Emma, he's been using your money to pay for his affair." Our credit card statements were even worse. Hotel charges from nights when David claimed he was working late. Expensive bottle service at clubs I'd never been to. Charges from a lingerie boutique that specialized in what their website called intimate gifts. I pulled up Madison's Instagram, which I'd never looked at before. Her account was public, full of photos from expensive restaurants, designer handbags, jewelry that looked suspiciously similar to the pieces David had apparently been buying. In one photo from 3 weeks ago, Madison was wearing a gold necklace with a small diamond pendant. The caption read, "Someone spoils me," with a bunch of heart eye emojis. I found the jewelry store charge from our credit card. Same date, same amount as what that necklace probably cost. "He bought her jewelry with our money," I said. My voice completely flat. He bought his mistress jewelry with money I earned, and he hit me when I caught him. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Emma, you need a lawyer." I nodded, still staring at the evidence of David's betrayal scrolling across my laptop screen. But something was happening inside me, something I didn't expect. Instead of feeling broken or devastated, I was getting angry. Really, truly furious. "Sarah," I said slowly, "David thinks I'm some kind of weak, clingy wife who's going to just disappear quietly so he can run off with his boss's daughter." "Yeah?" "He has no idea who he's dealing with." The next morning, I woke up looking like I'd been in a boxing match. The left side of my face was purple and swollen. My lip was twice its normal size, and I had bruises on my arms where David had grabbed me. Taking a shower hurt because of where I'd slammed into the wall. But you know what? I felt clearer than I had in months. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night going through our financial records, screenshotting everything, organizing it into folders. I'd found evidence of David's affair going back almost 3 months, longer than Madison had admitted to. The first call I made was to Lisa Thompson, a domestic violence attorney Sarah had found through her work connections. Lisa specialized in cases like mine, and she could see me that afternoon. "Emma," Sarah said, sitting at my kitchen table with her laptop, "I think you should see this." She'd been doing her own detective work, looking up information about Blackstone Technologies and their policies. What she'd found was interesting. "Look at this," Sarah said, turning her laptop toward me. "Blackstone Technologies has a strict policy about workplace relationships. Any romantic relationship between employees has to be disclosed to HR within 30 days, especially relationships that involve a supervisor and subordinate." I read the policy document Sarah had pulled from the company's website. Not only did undisclosed relationships violate company policy, but there were serious consequences, up to and including termination. "Madison is David's superior," I said slowly. "She's the marketing director. He's just a software engineer." "Exactly, and they've been hiding this for months." My phone rang. The caller ID said, "Jennifer Hayes." "Hello? Mrs. Richardson? This is Jennifer from Blackstone Technologies. I hope you don't mind that I got your number from the visitor log." "Oh, hi, Jennifer. What can I do for you?" "I wanted to check on you first," Jennifer said, and she sounded genuinely concerned. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck, but I'll survive." "Good, listen, There are some things you should know about your husband and Madison Blackstone." My heart started beating faster. "What kind of things?" "Can we meet somewhere private? I don't feel comfortable talking about this over the phone." We met at a coffee shop near the university, far from downtown and David's workplace. Jennifer was younger than I'd initially thought, maybe 23 or 24, with the kind of earnest expression that suggested she'd been raised to do the right thing even when it was difficult. "I've been working at Blackstone for 8 months, Jennifer said, stirring her latte nervously. "I started right after I graduated from UT, and I've been watching David and Madison for weeks, trying to decide if I should say something." "What have you been watching?" "They've been obvious. Coming in together sometimes, leaving together, meeting in her office with the door closed for hours. David's been sending personal emails from his work computer, and Madison's been using company resources for personal stuff." Jennifer pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots. David's work email, which she'd had access to as part of her administrative duties, contained dozens of messages between him and Madison. Not just affair-related stuff, but David complaining about me, about our marriage, about how I was holding him back. In one email, David had written, "Emma's so focused on her little design projects, she doesn't understand real ambition. She's content with small-town dreams while I'm trying to build something bigger." In another, "Madison gets it. She understands what it takes to succeed. Emma just wants to play house." Reading those emails was like being punched all over again. This was how David really saw me. This was how he talked about our marriage to his mistress. "There's more," Jennifer said quietly. "Madison's been bragging about stealing David away from you. She told another employee that she likes the challenge of taking married men." "She said that?" "I heard her say it to Tom Walsh from accounting. She said you seemed sweet but boring, and that David needed someone who could match his ambition." I sat back in my chair, processing this information. Madison hadn't just happened to fall for David. She'd deliberately targeted him because he was married. because she enjoyed the power of breaking up relationships. Jennifer, why are you telling me this? Jennifer looked down at her hands. My older sister went through something similar. Her husband cheated with a coworker, and nobody warned her until it was too late. She said afterward that if just one person had told her what was happening, she could have protected herself better. She paused, then looked up at me. And yesterday, seeing David hit you, that crossed a line. I can't just stay quiet anymore. Jennifer had printed out copies of the emails, as well as documentation of Madison and David's policy violations. Company computers weren't supposed to be used for personal communications, especially not communications that could create liability for the company. This is more than enough to get them both fired, Jennifer said. Mr. Blackstone doesn't know about his daughter's relationship with David, and he definitely doesn't know about the policy violations. That afternoon, I met with Lisa Thompson at her law office downtown. Lisa was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and the kind of confidence that came from winning difficult cases. She listened to my story without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When I finished, Lisa leaned back in her chair and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a shark that had just smelled blood in the water. Emma, your husband made several critical mistakes, Lisa said. First, he assaulted you in front of witnesses. That's a criminal matter, not just civil. Second, he's been using marital assets to fund his affair, which constitutes financial misconduct. Third, he and his mistress have violated workplace policies that could expose their employer to liability. Lisa pulled out a folder and started showing me similar cases she'd handled. What we're looking at here isn't just a divorce. We're looking at criminal charges, civil penalties, and potentially getting both David and Madison fired from their jobs. Is that too much? I asked. I don't want to seem vindictive. Emma, Lisa said, fixing me with a steady stare, your husband hit you. He used your money to buy gifts for another woman. He's been lying to you for months while planning to divorce you and take half of everything you've built together. Vindictive would be letting him get away with it. She was right. I'd spent 3 years of my marriage being the supportive wife, making compromises, putting David's career ahead of my own dreams because I believed we were building something together. I'd been so focused on being understanding that I'd forgotten to protect myself. What do we do next? I asked. We build a case that destroys him, Lisa said simply. And we do it properly, legally, and publicly. Lisa connected me with a private investigator named Mark Stevens. Mark was a former Austin police detective who specialized in matrimonial investigations, and he had the kind of thorough approach that left no stone unturned. I'll need about a week to build a comprehensive file, Mark told me during our initial meeting. But based on what you've already provided, this is going to be straightforward. Your husband wasn't very careful about covering his tracks. While Mark worked on the investigation, I started documenting everything I could remember. Every lie David had told me about working late, every unexplained charge on our credit cards, every time he'd been emotionally distant or critical of me. I also started taking care of myself in ways I'd neglected. I went to the doctor to document my injuries. I took photographs of the bruises as they changed color over the days following the assault. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in domestic violence. You know what's interesting about your case? Dr. Patricia Chen asked during one of our sessions. You're not just processing the betrayal of your husband's affair. You're processing the realization that the person you trusted most was willing to become violent to protect his mistress. She was right. The cheating hurt, but the violence was what really shattered my sense of safety. David had always been moody, sometimes critical, but never violent. The fact that he'd hit me and done it to defend another woman showed me that I'd never really known him at all. Mark Stevens called me 5 days later with his preliminary findings. Emma, you need to sit down for this, Mark said. Your husband and Madison Blackstone have been much busier than even you realized. Mark had followed them for a week, documenting their routine. They met every Tuesday and Thursday at a hotel bar downtown. Madison had been using her company credit card to pay for their drinks, which was another policy violation. David had been leaving work early on Fridays to meet Madison at her apartment. But the really damaging information came from David's digital footprint. I was able to access some of David's social media through public Wi-Fi networks, Mark explained. He's been sloppy about his privacy settings. I found evidence of their relationship going back almost 4 months, not two like Madison claimed. Mark showed me photos David had posted on a private Instagram account I'd never known about. Pictures of expensive dinners, hotel rooms, Madison's hand wearing the jewelry he'd bought her with our money. In one photo, David was kissing Madison's cheek at what looked like a company event, with the caption, "Can't wait to make this official." Make this official. He'd been planning to leave me for months. There's more, Mark said. I've been monitoring their communications through publicly available information. David's been apartment hunting with Madison. They've put a deposit down on a 2-bedroom place in downtown Austin. Rent is $2,800 a month. My stomach dropped. With what money? That's the interesting part. The deposit came from your joint checking account. David withdrew $3,500 last week and told the leasing office he was recently divorced. David had been so confident that I'd just disappear quietly that he'd already started moving on with his life. He'd used our money I'd earned through countless design projects and late-night work sessions, to set up his new life with Madison. Mark, I need you to document everything, I said. Every violation, every lie, every dollar he's stolen from our marriage. Already on it, Mark said. But Emma, there's something else you should know. I've been asking around about Madison Blackstone, and you're not her first married man. Mark had discovered that Madison had a history of targeting married employees at her father's company. 2 other men had left their wives for her over the past 3 years, though neither relationship had lasted more than 6 months. She's got a pattern, Mark explained. She goes after married men because she likes the challenge. Once she gets them to leave their wives, she loses interest and moves on to the next target. So David wasn't special. He wasn't Madison's great love. He was just her latest conquest, and he'd destroyed our marriage for someone who saw him as a temporary entertainment. The information Mark had gathered painted a picture of systematic deception that went far beyond a simple affair. David had been planning his exit strategy while lying to my face every day. He'd been stealing from our joint accounts to fund his new relationship, while I worked extra hours to make sure we could pay our bills. But now I had documentation of everything, and I was ready to use it. A week after the assault, when the bruises on my face were still visible but healing, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to tell my story publicly. I'd been quiet about what happened, only telling Sarah and my family. But as I sat in my apartment, looking at the evidence Mark had gathered, I realized that staying quiet only protected David and Madison. It didn't protect me, and it certainly didn't protect the next woman Madison would target. I opened Facebook and started typing. I want to tell you all a story about what happened to me last week. Some of you have noticed I haven't been posting much lately. Here's why. I posted a photo of my bruised face, taken the day after David hit me. Then I posted screenshots of our bank statements showing David's spending on his affair. I posted photos of the jewelry he'd bought Madison with our money. I posted excerpts from his emails calling me boring and clingy. My husband of 3 years has been having an affair with his boss's daughter for the past 4 months, I wrote. When I surprised him at work to celebrate his promotion, I found them together. When I confronted them, his mistress told me he called me a weight dragging him down. When I slapped her for destroying my marriage, my husband punched me in the face to defend her. I took a deep breath and kept typing. David Richardson and Madison Blackstone have been violating workplace policies, using company resources for personal use, and stealing from our marriage to fund their affair. But the worst part? When their lies were exposed, David chose violence over accountability. I included screenshots of David's emails, the hotel charges, the apartment deposit he'd made with our money. I made sure to tag David in the post so his friends and family would see it. I'm sharing this because I want other women to know the warning signs I missed. I want employers to know that workplace affairs aren't just personal matters. They create liability and hostile work environments. And I want David and Madison to know that there are consequences for their choices. I ended the post with, I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for accountability. And I'm asking other women to trust their instincts when something feels wrong. You're not crazy. You're not paranoid. And you deserve better than being called dramatic for expecting loyalty and respect. I hesitated for about 30 seconds before hitting post. Then I closed my laptop and waited. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within an hour, my post had been shared 50 times. Within 6 hours, it had been shared over 500 times. By the end of the day, it had reached over 10,000 people. The comments were a mix of support, outrage, and shared stories from other women who'd experienced similar betrayals. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years reached out to offer help and encouragement. Strangers shared their own stories of workplace affairs and domestic violence. But the most important responses came from people who knew David and Madison personally. David's college roommate commented, "Dude, what the hell? Emma's the best thing that ever happened to you." Madison's sorority sister wrote, "Madison's done this before. She broke up my friend's marriage 2 years ago." Several employees from Blackstone Technologies shared the post, adding comments about Madison's history of inappropriate workplace relationships. The local Austin media picked up the story within 48 hours. First, it was a blog post on an Austin lifestyle website, "Local Tech Workers' Domestic Violence Exposes Workplace Affair." Then the Austin American-Statesman ran an article about workplace harassment and corporate liability. David tried damage control. He posted his own Facebook status claiming I was unstable and trying to destroy his reputation out of spite. But by then, too many people had seen the evidence. His post got maybe 20 likes compared to the thousands of shares my original post had received. Madison deleted all her social media accounts. Richard Blackstone, Madison's father and the CEO of Blackstone Technologies, called an emergency board meeting. My phone didn't stop ringing for 3 days. Reporters wanting to interview me, lawyers offering their services, domestic violence advocates asking me to speak at events. I turned down most of the requests, but I did agree to one interview with a local TV station. "Why did you decide to go public with your story?" the reporter asked. "Because staying quiet only protects the people who hurt you," I said. David and Madison were counting on me being too embarrassed or too broken to fight back. They thought they could destroy my marriage and face no consequences because I'd just disappear quietly. What do you want people to take away from your experience? Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong in your relationship, investigate. Don't make excuses for someone who's betraying you. And know that you have more power than you think to hold people accountable for their actions. The interview aired during the evening news. By the next morning, my story had been picked up by news outlets in Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. David's mother called me, crying and apologizing for her son's behavior. Madison's father issued a statement that Blackstone Technologies was conducting a thorough investigation into recent allegations of policy violations and inappropriate conduct. But the most satisfying response came from Jennifer, the receptionist, who'd witnessed David hitting me. "Emma," she texted me, "I just wanted you to know that HR called me in for an interview about what I saw. I told them everything. Also, you've inspired 3 other women in our company to report inappropriate behavior from male supervisors. Things are changing here because of what you did." That's when I knew I'd made the right choice. Going public hadn't just been about my own justice. It had given other women permission to speak up about their own experiences. The Austin Police Department moved quickly once my story went viral. The combination of public attention and clear evidence made my case a priority, and Detective Sarah Wilson was assigned to handle the domestic violence charges against David. "Mrs. Richardson," Detective Wilson said during our meeting, "I've been investigating domestic violence cases for 8 years, and I've rarely seen such clear-cut evidence. We have witness testimony, photographic evidence of your injuries, and documentation of the events leading up to the assault." David was arrested at work on a Thursday morning. I wasn't there to see it. But according to Jennifer, who texted me updates, security escorted him out of the building in handcuffs while his coworkers watched. The local news stations were already camped outside Blackstone Technologies, so David's arrest was broadcast on the evening news. The charges were Class A misdemeanor assault and criminal mischief for destroying the cake I'd brought. In Texas, Class A misdemeanors can result in up to a year in jail and fines up to $4,000. David spent the night in Travis County Jail. His mother bailed him out the next morning, but not before his mugshot had been shared widely on social media. Turns out when you become internet famous for domestic violence, people don't forget. The restraining order I'd filed was approved immediately. David was prohibited from contacting me directly or indirectly, coming within 500 feet of me, or accessing our joint financial accounts without court supervision. But the criminal charges were just the beginning. Blackstone Technologies launched their own investigation into David and Madison's conduct. And what they found was damaging enough to warrant immediate action. Both David and Madison were suspended without pay, pending the completion of the investigation. The company's internal investigation revealed that David and Madison had violated multiple policies: failure to disclose their romantic relationship to HR, using company email for personal communications, using company credit cards for personal expenses. Madison had charged their affair-related dinners to her corporate account, creating a hostile work environment for other employees, potential sexual harassment claims from the power dynamic between Madison and David. But here's what really got Richard Blackstone's attention: the company's liability exposure. As CEO, Richard could face personal lawsuits if the company was found to be negligent in allowing a hostile work environment. Madison's history of targeting married employees created a pattern that the company should have addressed. "Mr. Blackstone is furious," Jennifer texted me. "Not just about the policy violations, but about the public relations nightmare this has created. The company's stock price has dropped because investors are worried about management oversight and corporate culture." 3 weeks after David's arrest, both he and Madison were terminated from Blackstone Technologies. David lost not only his job, but also his promotion and the salary increase he'd been so excited about. Madison lost her executive position and any chance of working for another major corporation in Austin. Her reputation in the business community was permanently damaged. David's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea bargain. If David would plead guilty to a reduced charge and complete anger management classes, the prosecution would recommend probation instead of jail time. I refused the plea deal. Emma, Lisa Thompson, said during one of our meetings, "You don't have to put yourself through a trial just to prove a point." "It's not about proving a point," I said. "David hit me because he thought there would be no consequences. If he gets a slap on the wrist and anger management classes, what message does that send to other men who think they can solve their problems with violence?" Lisa smiled. "You know, I've been practicing law for 15 years, and I don't think I've ever had a client who was more determined to see justice served properly." The trial was scheduled for 6 months later, but in the meantime, I filed a civil lawsuit against both David and Madison for emotional distress, theft of marital property, and conspiracy to defraud our marriage. The civil suit was where we could really hurt them financially. Unlike the criminal case, which was about punishment, the civil case was about compensation for the damage they'd caused to my life and finances. Mark Stevens had documented $4,300 in direct theft, money David had taken from our joint accounts to fund his affair and pay for the apartment deposit. But the emotional distress damages could be much higher, especially given the public nature of the humiliation and David's violence. Lisa was particularly excited about the conspiracy charges. David and Madison weren't just having an affair, she explained. They were actively planning to defraud your marriage while using your money to fund their future together. That's conspiracy, and it carries serious financial penalties. Madison's lawyer tried to argue that she wasn't responsible for David's marital misconduct, but the evidence was too clear. Madison had knowingly participated in spending marital assets, had encouraged David to hide money from me, and had actively worked to destroy our marriage while benefiting financially from our joint accounts. "The jewelry alone is worth $1,200, Lisa pointed out. Madison accepted gifts that she knew were purchased with stolen marital funds. That makes her liable for the theft as well as conspiracy. David tried one last desperate move. He contacted me through a mutual friend, asking if we could work things out privately without going to trial. "Tell him," I said to our friend Marcus, "that he should have thought about working things out before he hit me in the face to defend his mistress." The message came back that David was sorry about everything and just wanted to move on with his life. Move on with his life. Like our 3-year marriage was just an inconvenience he wanted to forget. That's when I knew I was making the right choice by refusing to settle quietly. While the legal proceedings moved forward, I was rebuilding my life from the ground up. The viral attention from my Facebook post had an unexpected side effect. My graphic design business exploded. People who'd seen my story wanted to support me by hiring me for their projects. I got contracts from local restaurants, small businesses, and even a few larger corporations who said they admired my courage in speaking out against workplace harassment. "Emma," said Maria from Sweet Dreams Bakery, "I want you to redesign all our marketing materials. What you did took real strength, and I want to support women who stand up for themselves." Within 2 months of David's arrest, I'd earned more money than I'd made in the previous 6 months combined. I was finally able to move out of the apartment I'd shared with David and into a cute studio apartment in South Austin. The new place was perfect for me. Hardwood floors, big windows for natural light, and enough space for a proper home office. For the first time in years, I could decorate exactly how I wanted without considering someone else's preferences. I painted the walls a warm yellow that made me happy every time I walked in. I bought plants, lots of plants, because David had always complained that they made the apartment look cluttered. I set up my workspace facing the window so I could look out at the trees while I worked. The best part was the silence. No more waiting for David to come home from his late meetings. No more walking on eggshells around his moods. No more pretending to be interested in his work stories that I now realized were probably lies anyway. I joined a support group for domestic violence survivors, which I'd been hesitant about at first. I didn't think of myself as a typical domestic violence victim because David had only hit me once. But Dr. Chen, my therapist, explained that emotional abuse often precedes physical violence. The way David talked about you to Madison, the financial deception, the gaslighting about his late nights, that's all abuse, Dr. Chen said. The punch was just the moment when the emotional abuse became physical. The support group was full of strong, intelligent women who'd found themselves in situations they'd never imagined. There was Jessica, a teacher whose husband had isolated her from her friends and family. Maria, a small business owner whose partner had sabotaged her work relationships. Karen, a nurse whose ex-husband had threatened her when she tried to leave. The thing that surprised me most, Jessica said during one of our meetings, was how normal he seemed to everyone else. People would say, "But he's such a nice guy." And I'd think, "Yeah, he's nice to you. You didn't see what happened behind closed doors." I understood exactly what she meant. David had been charming to our friends, supportive of my work in public, affectionate when other people were around. The cruel emails he'd sent about me to Madison, the dismissive way he'd talked about my little art projects, the financial deception. That was the real David, the one only I had seen. 3 months after the assault, I started dating again. Not seriously, just coffee dates and casual dinners with guys I met through dating apps. I was careful to meet in public places, to tell friends where I was going, to trust my instincts about people's behavior. That's how I met Ryan Martinez. Ryan was an elementary school teacher, which immediately appealed to me because it suggested patience and kindness. He was 30, had never been married, and had the kind of gentle sense of humor that made me laugh without making me feel like I was being entertained rather than appreciated. Our first date was coffee at a bookstore cafe. Ryan asked thoughtful questions about my work, listened when I talked, and didn't try to impress me with stories about his accomplishments or ambitions. "I saw your story online," Ryan said during our second date. "I hope this doesn't sound weird, but I was really impressed by how you handled everything. It takes real courage to stand up publicly like that." "It didn't feel like courage at the time," I said. "It felt like survival." Sometimes those are the same thing. Ryan didn't pressure me for physical intimacy, didn't ask intrusive questions about my marriage or the assault, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me as a person, rather than as a conquest or a project to fix. When I told him about the restraining order against David, Ryan's response was simply, "What can I do to help you feel safe?" That question, "What can I do to help you feel safe?" was something David had never asked in 3 years of marriage. Ryan asked it on our third date, before we'd even kissed. We took things slowly. Ryan respected my boundaries, checked in with me about my comfort level, and never made me feel like I was damaged goods because of what I'd been through. "You know what I love about you," Ryan said one evening as we walked around Lady Bird Lake, about 2 months into our relationship. "You know exactly what you want and what you won't accept. There's no guessing with you, no games. It's refreshing." David had always complained that I was too direct, too honest about my feelings and expectations. Ryan saw those same qualities as strengths. "My ex-husband used to say I was too demanding," I told Ryan. "Your ex-husband was an idiot," Ryan said simply. "Having standards isn't demanding, it's self-respect." My work was flourishing too. The publicity from my story had led to bigger and better clients, and I was finally able to charge what my work was actually worth, instead of undervaluing myself to get projects. I designed a logo for a local nonprofit, that supported domestic violence survivors. I created marketing materials for a women-owned catering company. I even got a contract with the city of Austin to design promotional materials for their small business development program. "Emma," said Linda Patterson, the woman who ran the nonprofit, "your design work has helped us increase our visibility and funding. But more than that, your story has inspired other women to reach out for help. You're making a real difference." That's when I realized something important. David's betrayal and violence hadn't just taken something from me. It had also revealed strengths I didn't know I had. I was more resilient, more independent, and more confident than I'd ever been when I was trying to be the perfect supportive wife. I wasn't grateful for what David had done to me, but I was grateful for who I'd become because of how I'd chosen to respond to it. 6 months after David hit me in that conference room, I was sitting in a Travis County courtroom watching him get sentenced for assault. He'd finally accepted a plea deal after his lawyer realized that going to trial would only make things worse for him. David pleaded guilty to Class A misdemeanor assault and was sentenced to 1 year of probation, 80 hours of community service, and mandatory anger management classes. He also had to pay a $2,000 fine and court costs. But the real victory came in the civil lawsuit. The judge awarded me $15,000 in damages, $4,300 for the money David had stolen from our marriage, $5,000 for emotional distress, and $5,700 in punitive damages designed to punish David and Madison for their conspiracy to defraud our marriage. Madison was held equally liable for the conspiracy charges, which meant she also owed me $15,000 in damages, plus my legal fees. "Your Honor," Lisa Thompson said during the civil trial, "the defendants didn't just have an affair, they systematically stole from the plaintiff's marriage while planning to abandon her without any financial resources. This was calculated fraud, and it deserves significant financial consequences." David's lawyer tried to argue that the damages were excessive, but the evidence was too clear. David's own emails proved that he'd been planning to divorce me while hiding money and using our joint funds to set up his new life with Madison. The judge wasn't sympathetic to David's financial situation. "Mr. Richardson, you chose to commit adultery, steal marital funds, and assault your wife when she discovered your misconduct. These consequences are the direct result of your choices." After the civil trial ended, David tried one last time to contact me through social media. He sent a message to my Instagram account saying he was sorry for everything and asking if we could find a way to move forward as friends. I screenshot the message and sent it to my lawyer. David was violating the restraining order by contacting me, which could result in additional criminal charges. "Do you want to pursue this?" Lisa asked. "No," I said. "He's already lost his job, his reputation, and $15,000. He's going to have to live with what he did for the rest of his life. That's punishment enough." David and Madison's relationship didn't survive the legal proceedings. According to Jennifer, who still updated me occasionally, they broke up during the civil trial when Madison blamed David for ruining her career, and David blamed Madison for seducing him away from his marriage. Madison moved back to Dallas and took a job at a much smaller company for significantly less money. David left Austin entirely and moved to Phoenix, where he found work as a junior developer at a startup, a significant step down from his position at Blackstone Technologies. "You know what's funny?" Sarah said over dinner one evening. "David thought he was trading up when he chose Madison over you. But look at your life now compared to his." She was right. A year after David's assault, my life was better in every possible way. I'd used the settlement money as a down payment on a small house in East Austin. It was a 1920s bungalow with original hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, and a sunroom that I'd converted into an art studio. The house was entirely mine. No shared mortgage, no joint decisions about paint colors or furniture. My business was thriving. I had steady contracts with a dozen regular clients and enough income to save money for the first time in years. I'd even been featured in Austin Monthly magazine as one of the city's rising creative entrepreneurs. Ryan and I had been together for 8 months, and our relationship was everything my marriage to David had never been. We communicated openly, respected each other's independence, and built each other up instead of tearing each other down. "I love watching you work," Ryan said one evening, sitting in my studio while I finished a logo design. "You get this look of complete focus, like nothing else in the world exists. David had always complained that I spent too much time on my hobby. Ryan understood that my work was my passion and my profession, and he celebrated my successes instead of minimizing them. 6 months ago, I was invited to speak at the University of Texas about domestic violence awareness, standing in front of 200 students, telling my story and answering their questions. I realized how far I'd come from the woman who'd stood frozen in that conference room. The most important thing I want you to understand, I told the students, is that domestic violence isn't always what you see in movies. It's not always a pattern of escalating physical abuse. Sometimes it's financial control, emotional manipulation, or isolation from friends and family. And sometimes, like in my case, it's a single act of violence when someone's lies are exposed. A young woman in the front row raised her hand. How did you find the courage to fight back instead of just walking away quietly? I realized that staying quiet only protected the people who hurt me, I said. David and Madison were counting on me being too embarrassed or too broken to hold them accountable. But I wasn't broken. I was angry, and I had every right to be. After my talk, several students approached me with their own stories of relationship abuse or workplace harassment. One young man said my story had helped him recognize the signs of emotional abuse in his own relationship. Thank you for showing us that we don't have to accept being treated badly, he said. Sometimes we need to see someone else stand up for themselves before we realize we can do it too. That conversation reminded me why I'd gone public with my story in the first place. It wasn't about revenge or publicity. It was about showing other people that they had more power than they realized to change their situations. On the 1-year anniversary of David's assault, I hosted a dinner party at my house. Sarah was there, of course, along with Ryan, some friends from my support group, and a few clients who'd become friends. We cooked together, laughed together, and celebrated how far we'd all come in our various journeys. Emma, said Jessica from my support group, a year ago you were married to a man who hit you and stole from you. Tonight you're hosting a dinner party in your own house, surrounded by people who love and respect you. If that's not winning, I don't know what is. As I looked around my dining room, at my artwork on the walls, at the friends who'd supported me through the hardest year of my life, at Ryan who'd shown me what a healthy relationship actually looked like, I realized Jessica was right. David had thought he was discarding me for something better. Instead, he'd freed me to become someone stronger, more independent, and more confident than I'd ever been while trying to be the perfect wife. So here's what I want you to remember from my story. First, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong in your relationship, investigate. Don't make excuses for behavior that doesn't make sense. Don't convince yourself that you're being paranoid when you're actually being observant. Second, you have more power than you think. When someone betrays you, lies to you, or hurts you, you get to decide how to respond. You don't have to disappear quietly to make their life easier. You don't have to protect someone who wouldn't protect you. Third, sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can become the catalyst for the best decision you ever make. David's violence and betrayal forced me to advocate for myself in ways I'd never done before. It showed me that I was stronger and more capable than I'd ever realized. And finally, there's life after betrayal. There's love after abuse. There's success after someone tries to tear you down. You don't have to let someone else's bad choices define your future. Today, I'm sitting in my own house, running my own successful business, in a relationship with someone who respects and values me. David is in Phoenix starting over at 32 because he destroyed his career and reputation for a woman who dumped him as soon as things got difficult. I'm not saying this to be cruel. I'm saying it because I want you to understand that justice doesn't always look like courtroom victories and financial settlements. Sometimes justice looks like living well while the people who tried to destroy you deal with the consequences of their own choices. If you're going through something similar right now, I want you to know that you're stronger than you think. You deserve better than you're getting, and you have more options than you realize. Don't let anyone convince you that you're crazy, dramatic, or asking for too much when you expect basic respect and honesty. And if my story helps even one person recognize the warning signs I missed, or gives someone the courage to stand up for themselves the way I finally did, then sharing the hardest experience of my life was worth it. You deserve better, you're worth fighting for, and you're not alone. Hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and subscribe for more stories about real people facing real challenges. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, your story isn't over yet. The best chapters might still be ahead of you. Thank you for listening.